Hey guys, welcome back to Kiwi Classics and Customs. Today we're working on the Ranchero, and what we're going to do is upgrade the ignition system. We're going to go with a Pertronix ignition, Petronix Coil, just bring the ignition to the 21st century rather than the old points and condensers and stuff. And I know a few of you are big fans of the points and condensers and say they don't often go wrong, but you know they do need a lot of adjusting. And the Petronix done right is really never going to give you another problem. So I want to go through that with you today, talk about how to install the actual unit and the wiring. And from what I've seen, that's the biggest problem. People don't wire them quite right. So here I am, a bit more of a tech video today. Hopefully you find it enjoyable. If you do, like and subscribe. That helps the channel, helps the algorithm, as they say. So yeah, let's get into it. I'll spin this camera around, kind of show you what we're up to or about to be up to. As you can see, we got some Pertronix ignition, matching Petronix coil, and that's all going under here. So I'm going to set up this camera on a tripod and try and help this make some sense to you guys. All right, back in a second. Alrighty. So, I've got a few tools here. First thing to do, obviously, pop off the distributor cap. Let's try and get that tucked out of the way a little, if we can. We're not blocking the camera shot, hopefully. Right, rotor off. Now, I've already checked this before I ordered the actual parts. One problem can be with these older distributors. Unfortunately, this car's not done a lot of miles, but sometimes this shaft can be quite worn, and that is going to give you problems when you're trying to convert it. It's going to give you problems, with points, and it's also going to give you problems with electronic. So make sure that's not worn, which it's not. If that is worn badly, I would recommend getting the Pertronix a complete distributor. They've got kind of ability blingy ones. As well as just the cast old school look, stock looking setup, so you can go either way there, but yeah, we're going to retain this original distributor. Now we just got to basically take the guts out of it, which is undoing your little ground strap. Now some of these screws will be reused and some are supplied in the kit, so just keep them handy, there, this one. Now some people like to retain all this stuff, keep them in a little bag or a little box in the car somewhere, so they can actually, if they get caught out with the electronic, they can reinstall the points and condenser. I'm completely convinced about that idea, but hey, it might save you bacon, but I've never had a problem with these. Points and condenser out of there. Now you do need to get this wire that's coming from the coil. Not sure why someone put a little knot in it here, but they did. Okay, so that's your old cable power supply for the points. We'll just pull that through, undo our knot, get that out of there. And yeah, we've got an empty distributor. So what we have to do next, get our little box of goodies. Now they do come with quite good instructions, which having had done a few, I'm not going to kind of bore you with reading those. But yeah, that is the replacement for the points and condenser. So what we got to do, now what we do need to do first actually is clean. Make sure this is clean. So we'll get some shop towels and get a little bit of brake clean. Let's just give that a little blast in there. This you don't want clean. Clean is good, and you don't want anything to, the little module has to ground onto this plate, and you just don't need stuff interfering with that. So it's just a matter of getting things done right, Right, grab your two wires. You got two wires from the module. They will go back through that same hole that the single power supply went to. comes with a nice little grommet type deal here, which will seal into there. Now make sure you have enough room, or enough length of cable here to allow this, your base plate to move, because it's going to have to move, with the vacuum advance. And pull yourself a little bit through where that little grommet is on the cables is pretty random, What happens is, pretty hard to see without getting into a super close-up, but there's only one screw holds it on, and there's a little dimple, kind of like a little raised boss here, I guess you could call it, and that drops into the screw hole, the other screw hole from the points, and that becomes your pivot point, and you can feel that when it locks in, and that gives you your adjustment for actually adjusting the gap from the magnetic, the Hall sensor, So we just get the one screw back in. What I'll do is I'll grab the camera off the tripod in a minute or two, and kind of give you an overhead view of it rather than this somewhat distant side view. So yeah, just make sure that's pivoting happily. We're just going to just barely nip it down on the far out position. Now there's a little ground cable here that was to the points. We're going to put that back on in the same, just that was attached where the condenser was. So we're just going to screw that back down so we have a good ground. That's the key part of all automotive electrical is good grounds, and that's a little flexible cable so that base plate can move, with the vacuum advance without losing the ground. It's going to give me a hard time. A little fiddly to get big fat fingers in there to get these things started sometimes, but you'll get there. There we go. So yeah, that's the module installed, the ground back on. Now what they do is they supply, because it is, it's a good kit, this they supply you a little wee bit of clear plastic. Now looks like a miniature lollipop stick, right? But what it is actually a gauge for adjusting the clearance between a little magnetic ring. Yeah, you can see it's magnetic because that little bolt's just hanging on it. Bolt, nut, I should say. Right, so this has to slide down over your distributor shaft, and you will feel it. It goes on in kind of in multiple different spots. So you just, as you press down on it lightly, you'll feel it kind of engage, and then it'll be happy to go down. And don't lean on it, it should just roll down in there. And then you can adjust your clearances. What I'm going to do is grab this camera and just give you a close-up, because you kind of need to see this with a reasonable amount of detail. So yeah, here's your electronic unit, your magnet that gives it the information. We just send the spark, and this little wee piece here basically just has to touch in here. Now our gap's big at the moment. Again, it's a little hard to pick up on camera, but all you do is loosen this screw here. Take back that off, and you'll see we can actually move that in and out and adjust that gap to suit. So I'm going to need two hands to do that, and need to get in there myself, so I'm just going to put you back on my trusty tripod, and we'll keep doing this thing. Right, so hopefully that makes sense to you. Get that little pivot point held on there. We'll put that little feeler in there. And I just hold it down, basically push, just put enough tension on to hold that little piece of plastic, which is, I think it's 30 thou thick. You can do it with the regular old school feeler gauges, but that's just in there. Now that's not, you've got quite a big window there, but that's, it's hanging in there, but it's not tight. So that's a good gap. That's done. That little nip, because we don't want it to move, and we won't need to adjust it again. Rotor button back on. That is the internal installation of it. Obviously we've still got these to run. And they're going to go to the coil, so we've got to get that off. So I'm going to, because that's the cap's sitting on top of the coil, we're going to bring this back over here, just sit it there to kind of get it out of our way. Alright, so what we've got to do now is take this little miniature coil off and put the appropriate coil on, made by Pertronix, so it's the right ohms and all that stuff. And of course it's a 12 volt coil, whereas this is a ballast resisted type coil. So technically it's a 9 volt coil. It's designed to run on 9 volts, and it does get a little boost under cranking. We're going to change all that. This is going to be a solid 12 volts all the time. So that's going away. Right. Now, as you can see, that wasn't planned. That just fell off. Literally fell off. The insulation, you can see that. The insulation kind of cracked, and the wiring was almost broken through. And yeah, with just me manhandling it just a little there, getting stuff undone, it's just snapped. So this car was really not far away from breaking down with a complete lack of ignition. So that was a good thing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this wire. You can't really see it here, but that's the wire. One thing they do recommend, Petronix recommend, is a minimum of a 16 gauge wire. That is probably, might be 18 if you're lucky. So it's not heavy enough. What I try and do is run, what Petronix say is to run a minimum, and there's the key word minimum, of a 16 gauge wire. So I try and run like a 14, a nice heavy wire, because that's supplying everything. You're putting a high energy ignition system on it, to make it run a little bit better, make it burn fuel a little bit better. Why starve it with a little skinny wire? As I said, the key word is minimum. They don't say a maximum of. It's a minimum. So I go a little bit thicker in the wire, and a little known, some of you will know I'm sure, but there's a lot of you won't know that this wire, this ignition supply wire, heads through here and goes through the firewall and runs into a resistor wire, which goes between the ignition key and the firewall there on the inside of the car. And that kills the voltage down from 12 volts to about 8-9 volts. And that's no mistake. I mean, that was a good move by Ford, because it reduces the volts going through the points, makes them last a little bit longer, but it does have the coil to match, to work with that system. And then when you're cranking, it actually gives, just under cranking, it gives 12 volts to the coil to give it an extra big spark to help the starting. And then as soon as you let go of the key and it springs back to the normal run position, it's back to 9 volts, and that way the points aren't burning up every 2,000 miles. So that was a great idea by Ford did it. Lots of people did it. It's not a Ford idea, but Ford used it. A lot of the GM products and Mopar products have a little ballast resistor, a little porcelain ballast resistor. It's about 3 inches long, and that's usually on the firewall somewhere. Ford chose to hide it under the dash. And I think they deliberately hid it, but it's a pretty good hiding place. There's an awful lot of people have wired these Petronix straight into that little skinny wire. One is too skinny, and two, it doesn't have the right voltage. So, and then they run into problems and can't figure out why. 9 out of 10 of the ones I've seen come through the shop that have been done, in the home garage, they have not done away with that resistor. What I do is I run that wire from the coil through the firewall and right to the ignition switch. And bypass that resistor wire completely. So we get an honest 13.5 volts probably under running conditions to the coil. So you get a nice big spark to your plugs, and everybody's happy. So yeah, let me get this coil mounted on here. I'm just going to swap the brackets. It's all pretty basic stuff. Bolt it down. We'll get these two wired up. These just go, it's black and red, negative, positive. They just go to the coil, negative, positive. And then we run the supply wire. So let me get that bolted on and I'll be right back. Okay, right, well, as you can kind of probably see, everything's kind of smothering it a little bit, but here's our new Petronix coil, and on the original factory coil mount bracket. Now this particular coil, I chose the epoxy filled ones. The epoxy ones don't mind being on their side like this. The oil filled ones really should be mounted upright, and the epoxy ones actually stand up to vibration much better than the oil filled ones. So they're a little bit more expensive, I think about 15 bucks or something like that, more expensive, but get what you pay for, you know. So it's reliability. We're not, you know, we didn't spend this money and this time to save $15 and have a coil that's going to fail because it starts leaking oil or something like that. So do it once, do it right. Now I've run a nice heavy cable, as you can see, compared to that other bit of wire that came off. Right, let's get it up there. You know, that's your two wires. You can see big difference in thickness, big difference in their ability to carry voltage. That factory one didn't have to carry a lot of voltage, so it was thin. You know, so it wasn't that they were skimping. It was doing the job that was required of it. The job we're wanting now is a lot tougher. It's got to supply a lot more voltage. So I've run this wire, I've run it along the valley, through the firewall. We've drilled a little hole in the firewall. Use a grommet. Whenever you go through a sheet of metal, guys, use a grommet. You know, because it will eventually wear through if you don't put a grommet. Some people put a bit of RTV around it. That doesn't work so well. You know, take a minute, find the right size grommet, put it in, run your wire through it. So yeah, that's now hanging out under the dash, waiting to be connected in there. This one we've just got obviously trimmed the length and crimp a terminal onto it. So yeah, let's do that. And then we can be kind of done under here, you know. That's the right terminal for that. I'll pop that into there. Now, red to positive. That's not a big shock, is it? No pun intended. I'll just put that down here. Get that tightened up. So really that's the installation done under the hood. Obviously we've got to set the ignition timing, you know, or check it. You know, it shouldn't be far off. It's not like you've got to retime anything, or you know, it's going to be pretty darn close. But obviously you've got to put the light on it and make sure it's, you know, pretty darn close. It's not close enough. So yeah, that's done under here, and show you what we get up to under the dash. Okay, so this is a bit of a close-up shot, trying to let you see what I'm doing. This is a piece of wire from the engine bay, which I've just run up over the steering column and over to the ignition switch here. Now all the wires, one wire that we want is right up behind here, and rather than standing on my head and trying to see under there, which is, I've tried, it's not impossible, it's easy to take the ignition switch out. Now on these forward switches you'll see you've got your main slot, and there's a little hole here, just here, that I'm not sure you can see it at that camera angle, but there's a little, about a 1/16 of an inch diameter little hole below the key. And what you do to get the lock barrel out is to turn it back to accessory, and then use like a paper clip, straightened out paper clip, and you'll feel a little spring-loaded button there, and you push that in, and that will allow you to turn it a little bit further. See, we've gone back past accessory, and that just pops out. Out it comes. Alright, so we just put that over there. Now, try and do this without bowling the camera. You've got to reach up behind here and turn and twist this switch. And my shoulders wants to be right where the camera is. Yeah, okay. I have to move the camera, and yeah, I'm not sure how we're going to do this, but we shall try. Just don't know whether that's how well that's going to work. But filming through the steering wheel. I know that's not a very good view, guys, but hey, it's the best I can do. There's just me here today, so there's no Scuba Steve to help with the camera work, so it's down to me. And all you do, I'll show you when I get this out. It's kind of like the bayonet style light bulb fitting. You can give this a little gentle tug down. Now, can you see? Hopefully you can. That is the little bezel, and you can see there's like a little shape like a stop tail bulb holder, and there's pins on the ignition switch, which you basically have to grab it at the back of this ignition switch, pull it towards the back of the car and turn just a little bit, and it will just disengage out of that little bayonet type fitting or slot and let that pop out. I hope that makes sense, I really do. So, and now we've got a bunch of wires. We just have to find the one that supplies the ignition, and I can tell you by experience it's typically pink, which, let me just bring this camera in here, hopefully you can see. Typically it's pink, and this wire is the pink one, and that has a resistor built into the wiring, so I am going to pull that out of there. I'm going to check it obviously with a test light to make sure that I'm right, because as many as I've done, you just never know. It's much quicker to do a quick test than wire it to the wrong spot. So let me reposition the camera. I wish I had that Hollywood budget to have a full-time paid cameraman, but I don't. Sorry about that. So I believe that is the wire we're looking for. I'm just going to disconnect that out of there, like so. And it's actually got some writing on it. I'm just trying to read what it says for your reference. It's actually got resistor written on it, on the wire. And you can see it's actually cracking a little bit. It's aging a little bit. So we're going to do away with that. Let me go and grab a test light and I'll be right back. Okay, got my test light, and alright, just put the key back in quickly. Here's our wire. That's off. We got nothing. We got ignition, and you can hear it cranking and the light staying on. It's flickering and messing around a bit, but it's staying on. Now if we put it on this one, I think you'll... Okay, see on that's an ignition supply as well, and that's off the back of the switch. But yeah, off, on. If you wire into that, as long as you're cranking, the ignition's got no power and she won't start. So you need to make sure it's on the one that has power while it's cranking. Most important. All right. So we just have to put the terminal on the end of this little puppy. I really need a new pair of strippers. The spring broke on these ones. Now those bullet terminals are a little bit smaller than the Ford fitting. So what I do is you get a box cutter, and carefully, there's a little split in them. You can just run your little blade of your box cutter in there and just open that up a bit. And then that will plug into the factory receptacle. And in theory, if I've done it right, and I'm deliberately not cutting away, there you go. I did it right, yay me. So yeah, now it's hard to get them to start much quicker than that. So yeah, Oh well, here we go. Just needs maybe a little bit of gas. All right. Okay. So there you have it, guys. Get this camera going. Right. Obviously, I've got to put the ignition switch back in the dash. Set the timing. You know, you need to be kind of able to set the timing if you're going to start diving into changing ignition pack. So I don't think I really need to show you, setting the timing or how to do that. You should have a good handle on that before you start this job, really. So yeah, there you go. It's Pertronix Ignition, installed, done, running. This thing's ready to go. So I might just hang it, wait for Steve to come in. We'll take this thing for a test drive, because I don't think we've actually had this out on the road test yet. So I'll wait for Steve to get here and we'll take this thing for a road test. So I'll be back in a minute. Okay, time to test drive this puppy. Well, for all intents and purposes, we're driving a 63 Falcon, but it's not. It's a Ranchero. But yeah, from the kind of your shoulders forward, it's all Falcon. But from your shoulders back, it's a pickup truck. Oh, it's actually quite lively. I mean, it is just a little baby 260. I think they were about 170 horse, 160, somewhere around there. Which, that's a big jump up from the little 170s, 6-cylinders that they had. So, it's a big improvement from them. But yeah, it's riding nice and smooth. Beautiful day here in Tennessee. But yeah, when you want to go, it goes. It's just the 2-speed automatic, the Ford-O-Matic they called them. So, not the fastest thing off the line. But man, it's got, it would certainly carry and tow whatever, weight you wanted to for the size of the vehicle. That's a nice, quiet, smooth cruiser. Steers nice. Now the steering's quite manageable at kind of motoring speeds. It is a little heavy, for parking, but that's something we're looking at, is giving it a power steer upgrade. But I mean, when you're driving, it's fine. It's just that, Kroger's parking, shall we say. But everything's doing what it's meant to do. Temperature's good. It's running smooth as silk with that new electronic ignition. It starts great. Not a misfire to be felt anywhere. Brakes are working good now. Go. Well, yeah, she's doing everything right, everything it's meant to do. So I'm going to call this one a win. Head back to the shop, park her up, and tell the owner to come get her, and they should have a lot of fun this summer motoring around in this. Alright guys, well, take it easy, and I will see you on the next video. See you guys.